Now, before we go to the next level, then comes E. And E is not a new wireless standard, it's a new QoS standard, quality of service standard, 11E. And so they said that, well, wireless is good, but we cannot talk over the wireless because everybody gets the same service. The voice should get some priority service and things like that. So we introduced some priorities and different levels of different priorities and so on and so forth. So that's what 11E does. And so they introduced, instead of DCF, they changed to HCF, hybrid coordination function, with two components, contention-free hybrid polling and contention-based enhanced DCF. And the DCF was changed. And I will explain a little bit as to how it was changed. DCF is that diagram that we just finished with the hatch area, right? That is the DCF, distributed coordination function. And then they added direct link, where the station traffic can be sent directly between the two stations. They added frame bursting, and the frame bursting means that you don't have to send just one frame. Once you get this RTS, CTS, you can send more frames, 5 frames. So in RTS, you say, well, I want to send 5 frames. And if you get CTS, you can send 5 frames. So frame bursting and group acknowledge. Obviously, if you're going to send 5 frames, you want one acknowledgement saying that I got all 5, I got 4 or whatever. So that is group acknowledge. Multiple priority levels and automatic power save delivery. And so automatic was where you didn't have to request. Basically, previously when you woke up, you told this guy that, okay, I'm awake, please send me my frames. Now, this new mode was added where, you tell them, oh, I'm going to wake up every morning 6 o'clock. That's it. So 6 o'clock, your packet will be delivered. Automatic. One packet is saved. Basically, you don't have to say request. You get the packet delivered. All right. So previously, there was a beacon. After the beacon, there is a contention-free period, which is called point coordination function. Then there was a contention period, which we call DCF, distribution coordination function. If you remember from the previous module, right? Now it is much more complicated. After beacon, there is HCF, hybrid coordination function, which is contention-free. Then there is enhanced DCF, which is contention period. But contention period is in 3 parts: enhanced DCF, HCF, and enhanced DCF again. So basically, there are 2 kinds of HCF here: contention-based and contention-free. So basically, they allowed 4 priorities, and each is kept in a separate queue. So the packet comes in, then we decide what priority it goes in. It's like having 4 stations in the same station, inside the same station. And each priority had a different value for CW min, which is the contention window, minimum, contention window maximum, IFS, which was the interframe spacing, transmission opportunity, and BO, backoff. Okay, so some of these are parameters, some of them are variables. For example, backoff is a variable which is random number between CW min and CW max. So the higher priority will draw a smaller number, and the lower priority will draw a bigger number. No, this a square bracket simply means array index. So you have CW min is an array of 4. So this is the first value, the second value, third value, and fourth value. This is just an array. Sorry, it is not the value. Similarly, everything is now an array. AIFS is an array, TXOP is an array, BO is an array. So now you can see how the priority will be done, because if you have stations which are consistently drawing a smaller number, they will get higher priority than the stations which are consistently drawing higher numbers. So basically, you arrange all these parameters so that the lower priority gets better advantage. They get first. Only when they are done, the other priorities get in. Now, remember, okay, actually I didn't explain AIFS. So this is, you remember we had SIFs, short interframe spacing, and we had PIFs, point coordination, and DIFs, distributed coordination function spacing. So now we have AIFS. access interframe spacing. A means aggregated access, whatever, right? So that one for these, so this could be changed so that this is smaller, this is larger, this is larger, this is larger. So these guys will have to wait for long period before they can even draw their random number, because if the medium goes busy before that, then they say, okay, like next time. If the medium is empty for that much period, then only you draw the random number, right? So these guys will get in faster, simply because AIFS is smaller. Okay, so you will send the data, wait for the acknowledgement data, get the acknowledgement data, get the acknowledgement. So this is a burst. Now this doesn't do group acknowledgement yet. That will be next one. So right now there are, for each packet there is an acknowledgement right after the packet, but you don't lose the medium. You can continue to keep the medium with you because you have reserved that in RTS. So EDCF parameters announced by the access point in the beacon frame cannot overbook higher priorities. So the thing is that all the higher priorities have to be booked, have to be reserved. So you can say, well, I want to do 3 megabits per second, and the station will give it to you. If you say I want 55 out of 55, they will say no. I mean, obviously, I think there's no guideline in the standard which says you have to, when you have to say no, but just the practice is that you don't want to reserve more than 25%, and everything else has to be left in the contention period. Okay, so EDCF allows multiple frame transmission, maximum time. So the maximum time that you can transmit this whole thing is called transmission opportunity, TX-op. So that is a parameter that is limited. So that is announced. So if we go back to this one, you see there is a TX-op 1, TX-op 2, TX-op 3. Previously, TX-op was equal to the maximum frame size. Now it is multiple times the frame size. All right, so we have TX-op, and we have CIFs and PIFs and everything else as before. Instead of PIFs, now we have AIFS, which will be basically for whatever priority you have, that is the time you have to wait. All right, direct link is very easy to understand. You tell the access point that I need a direct link to this station, and then the access point will say go ahead, and then you can send it directly. So that way you don't have to have 2 frames for each frame. Automatic power save delivery, I have already talked about. APSD, but first is unscheduled. Access point announces the waiting frames in the beacon. Unscheduled means that basically in every beacon there is a list of stations whose frames are waiting at the access point. So whenever you wake up, you listen to the next beacon, and if your frame is there, you send a request and you get it. That is unscheduled. Scheduled is, which is basically the station tells that I will get up at 6 a.m. and then you get your frames delivered at that time. Okay, no. The question was asked in the PLCP, there is 80 bits of that can be reduced. That has totally orthogonal to this. So I had just given a simple explanation that I'm just waking up from sleep and therefore I need some time to think. But even if you're not waking up asleep, you are doing something else, you're transmitting, you're going to receiving, from receiving to transmit. So there's a lot of turnaround time. So those 80 bits are required regardless, even if you don't go to sleep. Okay, I mean, I just gave an example, but there are many reasons that you don't want to just be able to get the first bit. So it's not arbitrary. What they do is this cost versus performance trade-off. If they reduce it to 40, then they will find out that 10% of the frames were lost. I'm just making up a number here, okay? And so somebody must have done some measurements that today, given that I want a $5 device, not a $50 device. With $50 device, I can do it. But for a $5 device, I really need to wait so many milliseconds, and that means I need this many bits.
But we lose the data, right?
Yeah, so the thing is cost-performance trade-off, right? So the cheaper you make, the performance you lose, right? If you want higher performance, you go to the higher cost. Now, because we are designing a standard for the whole world, we cannot really design it for high cost too much. So we put our cost goals, as we call it, and somebody does in the industry, somebody does some simple implementation, and they say, yeah, this is very, very difficult to do. So all these numbers come from those experiments. Or one of these professors publishes a paper and says that, well, 60 seconds we can do it in 60 microseconds or whatever, and then the number becomes the standard. right? So it could come from anywhere. Yeah. Okay, so here thing, anything can be done, but the more rules you make, you are increasing the cost. Remember this, because now you are increasing the rule, you are increasing the complexity. If we could do dynamically, we could leave it to the manager. A lot of parameters are left to the manager. Okay, so when you buy a new access point, if you really go into advanced mode, it will ask you whether you want higher amplification, lower amplification, short gap. There are lots of parameters which we don't touch, right? But they're all there.
These are standards, I think.
Yeah? No, the standard allows those possibilities. The thing is, there are several things, as I said. First of all, standard allows lots of possibilities. Industry cuts it down. And then the management cuts it down even further. Because industry cuts it down, and then if you are very smart, then you can probably play in that area, but most of us don't change any defaults. Right? So default is just one value, but there is a range that is allowed, even by the product. So we know scheduled and unscheduled. This is we had already covered before. Now, one more difference is that there is no more bit required. So basically, before 11E, access point announced in the beacon, the station polls and AP sends one frame which says, I have more for you. And then the STA says, okay, I am ready for the second one, and then it sends the second frame. So there is this back and forth for multiple frames. And after 11.E, it could just burst it to you. All right, so you have 11.6, homework 6A, and this is fill in the blanks. I think you should be able to do this if you read the homework. I mean, if you read the handouts and the reading list. Make sure that you read the reading list.